The horizon was a jagged scar against the darkening sky, a testament to the inferno that had consumed the once vibrant plains. Captain Mark Briggs stood amidst the ruin, his eyes scanning the battlefield with a steely resolve. The air was thick with the acrid stench of burnt metal and scorched earth, mingled with the faint, lingering scent of human sweat and blood. The ground beneath him trembled occasionally as distant explosions reverberated through the shattered landscape. The Ecar had arrived with the wrath of an apocalyptic storm. Their war machines, towering and insidious, cast long shadows over the battlefield. Each massive step they took sent tremors through the earth, their mechanical feet crushing everything in their path. The once bustling human outposts had been reduced to smoldering wreckage, their walls punctured by plasma fire and twisted metal. Briggs clenched his jaw as he surveyed the devastation. His face, etched with lines of fatigue and experience, was partially obscured by the brim of his battered helmet. Beside him, a jumble of soldiers, tired, dirty, but unbowed, manned the hastily constructed defenses. Their voices were a low murmur of grim determination, punctuated by the occasional shout or burst of gunfire. "Captain!" A voice called out, slicing through the cacophony of war. Sergeant Morales, a bear of a man with a scar running the length of his cheek, approached with a grim expression. "The Ecar are advancing again. They're getting closer." Briggs nodded, his gaze locking on the advancing alien war machines. The Ecar's commander, Krenox, was a towering figure even among his kind. Four eyes glowed with an unsettling luminescence as he surveyed the battlefield with an air of detached superiority. The alien's armor, a formidable exoskeleton of shifting metal, reflected the waning sunlight like a grotesque mirror. "They're confident," Briggs muttered, almost to himself. "They think this is just another easy victory." Krenox had underestimated humanity's spirit. The Ecar had believed that the sight of their overwhelming force would send the humans fleeing in terror. Yet here they stood, soldiers from various nations, defiant and resolute. Their rifles trained on the enemy, their eyes steely with determination. Among them, young Private Jackson was a picture of raw, trembling bravery, his face pale but his grip on his rifle steady. The alien forces opened fire with their plasma cannons, the air sizzling with intense heat. Explosions erupted across the battlefield, sending debris and twisted bodies flying. Jackson, barely 18, fired his rifle with trembling hands, his heart pounding like a drum. Sergeant Morales, battle-hardened and gruff, shouted over the din, "Stay focused, Jackson. Aim for their joints and eyes, those are their weak spots." Jackson nodded, swallowing hard. His shots were erratic, but one bullet struck an exposed joint on an advancing Ecar warrior. The alien staggered, its pain screech piercing the chaos. Jackson's next shot found the creature's eye, and it collapsed, blue blood splattering the ground. Krenox's translator device buzzed with the sounds of distress and disbelief. The commander's mandibles clicked in frustration. His forces were faltering. The humans, who should have scattered at the sight of their invincible machines, were fighting with a tenacity and ferocity that defied all logic. The sound of artillery fire erupted from the human lines, shells tearing through Ecar ranks with thunderous explosions. The humans' ballistic weapons, though primitive compared to Ecar technology, were proving unexpectedly effective. The once feared war machines now seemed vulnerable under the relentless assault. Captain Briggs surveyed the battlefield with grim satisfaction. The Ecar were formidable. But they were not invincible. His strategy was clear: hold the line, push back with everything they had. Mortar teams, concentrate fire on the center. Riflemen, keep up the pressure. Show these bastards what it means to mess with Earth. As the humans tightened their grip, a sudden realization dawned upon Krenox: the humans were not merely resisting, they were fighting with an elemental, desperate resolve that he had never encountered. They were turning the tide of battle, and the Ecar commander had to reassess his strategy. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long, ominous shadows over the battlefield. Both sides took stock of their losses, the war far from over. Captain Briggs, though exhausted and battered, felt a surge of grim satisfaction. They had held the line, against overwhelming odds, they had proven that humanity would not bow, would not surrender. The night was silent but for the distant echoes of war, a quiet reminder of the battle yet to come. The stars above, indifferent to the carnage below, watched over a world that refused to give up. Dawn broke with a bloody hue, casting an eerie light over the battered landscape. The battlefield, now a tangled mess of smoke, debris, and twisted metal, lay under a sky streaked with red. The once crimson sun now bathed the desolate plains in a harsh, unforgiving light. For Captain Mark Briggs and his men, the dawn brought both grim resolve and a flicker of hope. Briggs stood at the edge of the trench, his face illuminated by the harsh glow of makeshift lamps. His uniform was streaked with grime, his eyes sunken from sleepless nights. The weight of command pressed heavily upon him, but he refused to falter. Around him, soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, reinforcing fortifications and preparing for the inevitable onslaught. "Captain," Sergeant Morales reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. "The Ecar are regrouping. They're amassing their forces for a counterattack. We need to be ready." Briggs nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon where dark shapes gathered. The Ecar were preparing for their next assault, and this time, they were bringing everything they had. He could see the massive war machines advancing, their forms casting long, menacing shadows over the battlefield. Among them, the Iron Fist, a unit of elite Ecar warriors, moved with brutal efficiency. Their heavy armor gleamed ominously in the dawn light, a symbol of their formidable might. "Get the mortar teams into position," Briggs ordered, his voice carrying the weight of authority. "And tell the riflemen to stay sharp. We're about to face the full force of the Ecar." The soldiers worked quickly, setting up additional defenses and loading their weapons. Private Jackson, his leg now bandaged but still painful, moved with a determined limp. Despite his injury, he was resolute, his eyes reflecting the fiery determination of a soldier who had seen the horrors of battle and refused to be broken. Sergeant Morales, his expression grim, assembled a squad of the best marksmen. "We're going to flank those Iron Fist units," he said, his voice low but resolute. "We need to hit them where it hurts." As the sun climbed higher, the Ecar launched their counterattack. The ground shook with the impact of their war machines, their plasma cannons unleashing a storm of fire that rained down on the human positions. The air was filled with the deafening roar of combat, a chaotic symphony of explosions and gunfire. Briggs stood at the forefront, his rifle at the ready, his voice cutting through the din. "Hold your fire until they're in range. Make every shot count." The human soldiers braced themselves, their faces set with grim determination. The Ecar advanced, their ranks a wall of metal and muscle. But the humans did not waver. As the Ecar forces came within range, Briggs gave the command, and a storm of bullets and rockets erupted from the human lines. The battlefield erupted into a cacophony of violence. Human artillery and rifles spewed fire, their ammunition tearing through the Ecar ranks. The Iron Fist, heavily armored and seemingly invulnerable, pressed forward with brutal efficiency. But even their formidable strength could not withstand the relentless onslaught. Private Jackson, despite the pain in his leg, fired with relentless focus. Each shot he took felt like a small victory, a defiant gesture against the alien invaders. His comrades, battered but unbowed, fought with equal determination, pushing back against the Ecar's relentless advance. In the midst of the chaos, Sergeant Morales led his squad in a flanking maneuver against the Iron Fist. They moved with stealth and precision, using the debris in trenches for cover. As they neared their target, Morales signaled for the attack. A barrage of explosives and concentrated fire erupted from their position, catching the Iron Fist off guard. The heavy armored Ecar warriors staggered under the assault. Their invincible facade shattered as explosions tore through their ranks, sending their bodies and armor flying. The humans pressed their advantage, their spirits lifted by the sight of the once feared warriors falling before their onslaught. Krenox, observing from his command post, watched in growing fury as his elite forces were decimated. The humans were proving to be an unexpected threat, their resilience and ingenuity defying all logic. The commander's mandibles clicked in frustration as he saw the tide of battle shifting against him. Briggs watched with a mix of pride and concern. The battle was far from over, and the Ecar were far from defeated. But the sight of the Iron Fist being pushed back was a glimmer of hope in the midst of the relentless conflict. His mind raced as he prepared for the next phase of the battle. As the sun reached its zenith, the battlefield was a nightmarish landscape of smoke and fire. Both sides fought with everything they had, neither willing to yield an inch. Captain Briggs knew that the war was far from over. The Ecar were regrouping, and their determination would only be matched by his own. The day's battle had proven one thing: humanity would not bow, would not surrender. And as the sun blazed overhead, Briggs and his soldiers prepared for whatever came next, ready to fight with every ounce of their strength. The battlefield was a hellscape of smoldering wreckage and scattered debris. As twilight began to descend, it cast long shadows over the scarred earth, a stark contrast to the relentless fury of the day. The Ecar, their formidable advance now stalled, regrouped under the cover of encroaching darkness. The humans, battered but unyielding, prepared for what could be their final stand. Captain Mark Briggs paced the makeshift command center, the glow of flickering lamps casting eerie shadows on the walls. His face, though streaked with grime and fatigue, held a steely determination. Around him, the hum of activity filled the air as soldiers reinforced positions, checked equipment, and shared terse words of encouragement. The war had taken its toll, but the spirit of defiance remained unbroken. Sergeant Morales entered, his face grim. "Captain, our scouts report the Ecar are mobilizing for a full-scale assault. They've regrouped and are preparing for a final push." Briggs nodded, the weight of the impending battle pressing heavily on him. "We're going to need everything we've got. Inform the mortar teams to brace for impact and get the riflemen into position. We'll hold this line or die trying." As darkness fell, the battlefield was illuminated by sporadic bursts of gunfire and the fiery trails of artillery shells. The Ecar war machines, their metal exoskeletons gleaming ominously, advanced once more. The Iron Fist, reconstituted and angrier than ever, led the charge. Their heavy steps reverberated through the ground, a grim omen of the violence to come. In the trenches, the air was thick with tension. Private Jackson, despite the agony in his leg, fought with a grim determination. His hands trembled as he reloaded his rifle, but his eyes were fierce. Beside him, Sergeant Morales organized the defense, his voice cutting through the murmur of apprehensive soldiers. "Hold steady," Morales barked. "They'll come at us with everything they've got. Remember, our survival depends on every one of us holding this line." As the first Ecar war machines breached the outer defenses, the humans unleashed a storm of fire. Rockets and bullets streaked through the air, tearing into the advancing aliens. The Iron Fist, impervious to conventional fire, plowed through the human defenses, their armored forms a nearly unstoppable force. Captain Briggs, his rifle at the ready, moved through the chaos with unwavering focus. His voice, steady and commanding, rallied his men. "Concentrate your fire on their weak points. We need to slow them down." The battlefield erupted into a brutal clash of steel and flesh. The humans fought with every ounce of strength they had left, their desperation fueling their ferocity. Sergeant Morales led a countercharge against a breach in the line, his men following with determined grit. Their bodies clashed with the Ecar, their cries of defiance mingling with the roar of combat, as the Iron Fist pushed forward. Briggs saw an opportunity. He signaled to his remaining men, rallying them for a decisive maneuver. "We're going to hit them from the side. Move out." The squad moved with grim precision, using the remnants of the battlefield for cover. They flanked the Iron Fist, unleashing a concentrated barrage of explosives and fire. The heavy-armored Ecar warriors staggered under the assault, their formidable advance faltering. Krenox, observing from his command post, roared in frustration. His elite forces, once considered invincible, were now being pushed back by the tenacity of human soldiers. The commander's mandibles clicked in irritation as he ordered a full-scale assault, throwing everything he had into a final push. The humans, exhausted but resolute, braced themselves for the onslaught. The air was thick with the stench of burning metal and the cries of the dying. The Ecar pressed forward, their numbers overwhelming, but the humans fought with an unyielding resolve. Each soldier fought with the determination of those who had everything to lose and nothing left to give. Private Jackson, his leg throbbing with pain, fired his rifle with unrelenting focus. Each shot was a testament to his refusal to surrender. Sergeant Morales led another charge, his men fighting with a ferocity that seemed to defy their exhaustion. Captain Briggs, amidst the chaos, saw Krenox charging into the fray. The alien commander was a whirlwind of destruction, his fury driving him forward. Briggs, his heart pounding, saw this as their chance. "Cover me!" he shouted, charging towards Krenox with a group of his best soldiers. The two commanders clashed, their battle a microcosm of the larger conflict. Krenox's strength was immense, but Briggs fought with a fierce determination that matched the alien's fury. The outcome of their personal duel mirrored the fate of the battle itself. With a final, desperate effort, Briggs managed to strike a decisive blow. He plunged his knife into Krenox's chest, the alien commander's eyes widening in shock. The fall of their leader shattered the Ecar's cohesion. The human forces, seeing their chance, surged forward with renewed vigor. As the sun began to set, the Ecar, leaderless and disorganized, began to retreat. The battlefield was littered with the fallen, both human and alien. The humans had held their ground, their defiance and courage turning the tide of battle. Captain Briggs surveyed the battlefield, his heart heavy with the weight of loss but filled with pride. They had faced an overwhelming foe and emerged victorious. The battle was over, but the scars of war would remain. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, the humans stood victorious, their spirits unbroken, ready to face whatever the future held. The battlefield lay still under the blanket of night, a graveyard of smoldering wreckage and broken dreams. The aftermath of the conflict was a stark contrast to the chaos of the day. Flickers of flame cast long shadows over the twisted metal and shattered earth, creating a landscape both haunting and eerily beautiful. Captain Mark Briggs stood among his men, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of portable lamps. The victory was hard-won, but it came at a cost. The soldiers were weary. Their bodies and spirits battered, yet their eyes gleamed with the quiet satisfaction of having defied the odds. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning metal and the distant sounds of the wounded. The medics worked tirelessly, moving among the injured with practiced efficiency. Private Jackson, his leg bandaged and his face etched with exhaustion, sat near a makeshift medical station. Despite his pain, he couldn't help but feel a sense of accomplishment. The battle had been brutal, but they had held their ground. Sergeant Morales approached Briggs, his face streaked with grime and blood. "Captain, we've managed to salvage what we can. The Ecar are in full retreat, but we need to assess the damage and reinforce our positions." Briggs nodded, the weight of leadership pressing heavily on his shoulders. "We'll need to fortify our defenses and secure the perimeter. Communications are still down, so we're on our own for now. We'll need to make do with what we have." As the soldiers moved to carry out their tasks, the remnants of the Ecar forces began to scatter, their once formidable war machines now broken and abandoned. The human victory was evident, but the cost was apparent in the faces of those who had fought so hard. In the quiet moments between the flurry of activity, Briggs found himself standing alone, gazing out over the battlefield. The stars above seemed indifferent to the carnage below, their light a cold reminder of the vastness of the universe. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The sudden sound of footsteps drew Briggs' attention. He turned to find Sergeant Morales and Private Jackson approaching, their expressions solemn. "Captain," Morales began, "we've received word from HQ, reinforcements are on the way, but it'll take time. They're sending supplies and additional troops." Briggs sighed with a mix of relief and weariness. "Good to hear. We'll need every bit of help we can get." For now, we focus on recovery and preparation. Jackson, despite his injuries, looked up at Briggs with a determined gaze. Sir, what about the Ecar? Do we know if they're planning another attack? Most likely, Briggs replied. We've managed to push them back, but they won't take this defeat lightly. We need to be ready for whatever comes next. The night wore on as the soldiers worked to secure their position and tend to the wounded. The echoes of the day's battle lingered in the air, a somber reminder of the cost of victory. Yet amid the exhaustion and grief, there was a palpable sense of unity and resolve. They had faced an overwhelming enemy and emerged victorious, a testament to their courage and determination. As dawn approached, the horizon began to lighten, casting a pale glow over the battlefield. The first rays of sunlight touched the scarred landscape, revealing the full extent of the devastation. The once hopeful sky now seemed to bear witness to the sacrifice and struggle of those who had fought to defend their home. Captain Briggs, standing at the edge of the command post, looked out over the remnants of the conflict. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of approaching vehicles. Reinforcements had arrived, their presence a much-needed boost to the weary troops. As the new arrivals began to assist in the recovery efforts, Briggs felt a renewed sense of determination. The victory had been hard-fought, but it was only the beginning. They had proven their mettle, but the war was far from over. Turning to his men, Briggs spoke with a voice filled with resolve. Today, we celebrate our victory. Tomorrow, we prepare for the challenges ahead. We've shown that humanity will not bow, will not surrender. We'll face whatever comes next with the same courage and strength that carried us through this battle. The soldiers, their spirits lifted by their leader's words, nodded in agreement. They had fought for their home, their people, and their future. The battle had been a testament to their resilience, and they were ready to face the unknown with unwavering resolve. As the first light of day broke over the horizon, the humans stood together, their unity a beacon of hope amidst the darkness. The echoes of their triumph would resonate through the stars, a reminder that no matter how formidable the enemy, the spirit of humanity would endure.